brought Alex Hormozi 7,000 leads in just under 5 weeks. And in exchange, it gave me something worth $100 million.
Thank you all for putting the effort that you guys did to promote the book.
If you don't know Alex Hormozi, is the hottest right now in growing businesses from $1 million to $100 million in revenue.
Just about 100,000 books sold the first day.
But I never wanted Alex money. I wanted to know his secrets. How you achieve such scale?
Let me give you this thing that obviously costs money because I am so confident that I can provide you value.
My name is Enzo, and my mission is to bring the world-class strategies and tactics to grow businesses with cold outreach. Today, I interview Alex Hormozi himself about cold outreach, and God, he delivered. So if you want to learn how to generate 20,000 leads per day, listen up. Stick around to the end because I'll tell you how my cold email secret got me on the call with Alex in the first place. Enjoy. Alex, welcome to the show. Excited to have you with us today.
Pumped to be here. Let's do it.
Awesome. Well, let's get straight into business. Today, I brought the greatest mind around cold outreach. They all prepare a really exciting question for you today, but probably the most requested question ahead of this call. What is the best cold email outreach you ever received, and why it caught your attention?
The best one is actually the voicemail script that I put in the book, which is, hey, this is John. I'm calling about Burger King. Give me a call back. So you talk about the competitor of theirs, and you just have it's a completely open hook. And I think it also probably would work for a cold email. I just know that I got it from a voicemail. That's the best open hook to get set call.
At Gym Launch, you guys talk with 1 out of 5 gym in the US. This is a completely wild number. We're talking about 20% of the time. How you guys were able to make that happen? How you achieve such scale?
So 2 things. One is that we didn't change our business over and over again, is that we didn't change our business over time, and we had 2 reliable ways of getting customers, and we continue to do that month after month after month for 6-7 years now. That's it. I mean, there's whatever 150,000 gyms. You do the math on how many gyms you sell, and you reverse that to how many gyms have showed up for appointments, and that's it. We've talked to a lot of gyms.
So a lot about the fundamentals and keep doing the boring work, same thing over and over and again.
Yep.
In the book, when you were talking about the cold outreach specifically, you knew that a competitor was doing it and you could kind of see a little bit of revenue going in, but what was the kind of sign of life in the channel that made you say, we got to keep investing in this? This is a 12-month journey, not a 3-month journey.
To me, the easiest decisions to make are the ones where you already see somebody else doing it. If I'm getting in contact with people, I'm in front of someone's eyeballs that is my ideal customer, with enough iteration, I can get them to move to the next step, right? And that's basically, the reason I like cold outbound so much is that it's so reliable. Now it just takes more time to get the nuance of the audience that you're going after, and you guys are in the game, so you get it. Like there's just 100 tiny little steps, but I encourage people who are getting into that game to just only look at progress from one step to the next, and one step to the next, and one step to the next, and then it takes a very long time to lay all the bricks across the bridge. But then once the last brick's in, all of a sudden the money that was just stockpiled, boom, it flows through. And so, yeah. And you also the nice thing was there's so many, once you do get the first dollar across, then you just start turning dials. Like, okay, how can I get open rate up? How can I get show rate up? How can I get close rate up? Can I change this offer? Like all that kind of stuff. And then it can just become a really well-oiled machine.
So when you were planning to expand from gym 7 to gym 10, you were still doing 12 hours of sales meeting a day from 8 to 8. When do you think is the right time for a founder to remove himself from the front end of the sales process? And how do you think they should organize themselves building their first sales team?
I think it depends a little bit on the business, because I don't want to give hard and fast rules, because it does depend also how proficient you are. Like if you're a natural salesperson and you're very good at it, then it can make a huge difference in the business. Like the business sometimes can't sustain you not selling, right? And so I think it's better to just continue to sell, add people to the team. You act as sales manager or really sales lead. Because at least as I define it, you've got salespeople, sales lead who kind of mentors the people, and then sales manager who's really in charge of recruiting, hiring, training, management, culture for the team. For me, it starts to get a little bit basically lead turns into manager if they have the right character traits and actually enjoy investing in people, are not just killers, which there's a place for them, but they are not the best managers. They're usually actually terrible managers. Usually around 4, right as you're getting into 4 into 5 is when one person can pop up, and then now you're managing the sales team. And then at that point, I would try and see either is there somebody that I've been grooming since day one to take this over for me? And if you don't feel that way about any of the people, which means you're probably not that good of a sales manager as an aside, you can recruit from the outside and bring them in. And I usually look for somebody who has experience in a comparable industry and type of sale. And I would say type of sale probably matters more than the industry, in my opinion. So like if you're in high volume transactional sales, it's a very different type of sales profile and training than, let's say, 6-month SaaS sales, right? But it's a very different type of person, different skill set that you have to teach. And so I'd run them. You don't want to take, so like, I grew our, B2B SaaS company from 10 million to 100 million. And I'm like, well, what's the sales cycle? 6 months. And I'm like, I'm not going to put that guy into a transactional weight loss business. It doesn't really, even though he had this great track record and maybe we're at 10 million, we went to 100, it's probably not going to work out.
So Enzo and I both run cold email agencies, and then Raul and Nils ran a cold email agency in the past. I send like 1 million cold emails a month at this point. And so sometimes clients come to us and they're like, hey, this is the copywriting we're using on our website, or this is the copywriting we're using on our ads. We should put this in email. And I always tell them, no way, we're not doing that. It's because the channels are just different. And so when you are doing your outreach, how do you do the copywriting so that it's different? Or like, what are the differences for doing copywriting on Facebook ads versus a cold outreach?
I don't have a very good answer. My biggest copywriting frame is, what would I respond to? For if I see an ad, I'm like, what would actually get me to respond to this? Now, a big part of that's the offer, how it's written, and the same thing with the email. Like sometimes long emails don't necessarily convert into higher response rates on cold. Like it really kind of depends on the industry and what the offer is. The change for me would just, I think Gary has this really good analogy for it, but it's really contextual. It's like walking to a nightclub versus walking to a library. Even if you're the same person, you might dress differently and you could look out of place. Even though I think that if there's a Facebook ad that looks really good, I'd be like, what's the core message of this? And can I translate this into what would appear to be one-to-one communication? And so the biggest difference between an ad, so here's my roundabout way of answering. If you're running an ad versus an email, one is one-to-many, one is one-to-one, and you probably the best way to get someone to ignore one-to-one communication is to make it look like it's one-to-many. So you can tell that to your clients.
Absolutely, yeah.
To bounce back on that, I think, we can all agree that the entire cold outreach process is really about increasing someone's conviction that they will receive value if they respond to our email.
Sure.
I think you guys are reaching out to 20,000 leads daily at acquisition.com. I'm curious to know how you guys make everything work and how you personalize at this scale.
Yeah, well, it is different companies. So that's between portfolio companies, not one company, just for clarity. The personalization obviously there's tools now that can do personalization. But we use VAs a lot of times to help find the little tidbits that get put into the email. So during the data enrichment process, that's one of the things that we'll do from a tactical perspective. I am also 5 levels above this. So I'm giving you the manager of those teams would probably know a lot better answers than me. But just with broad brushstrokes, VAs are a big part of it. We use software tools whenever we can to automate any kind of personalization. And a big part of it really comes down to how good the lead magnet is, which is what I put a specific part on the cold outreach of big, fast value, even and especially things that are quote not scalable create the craziest response rates, in my opinion. And so the big breakthrough that we had in the cold outreach process that I showed the numbers on was when we switched the lead magnet. And that was what made the huge bump in response rates and then ultimately sales.
So you guys would also implement the lead magnet straight into the copy that you send to your base.
Totally. Well, because I want to if I'm talking to a complete stranger, it's they don't care. So it's let me give you this thing that obviously costs money because I am so confident that I can provide you value. And even if you don't buy anything from me, you will get real value because other people in the marketplace charge for this thing. So it's not me ascribing value to it. It's saying other people charge for this. And then on the back end, it's okay, great. How can I operationalize the shit out of this to drive down my cost so that I can do this at scale, whatever my little lead magnet deliverable is. And so the information lead magnets, in my opinion, are overdone because one, they're usually sucky fluff. And so everyone knows that. And even if yours isn't, the likelihood that people still think it is high. Whereas giving portions of service away for very specific problems, I think is probably my favorite type of lead magnet that we can do. If I had I think I give an example of, if you're an IT company that has, servers and you can show that you can increase speed load times and how that's going to affect their company. It's hey, let me just do this. I'll do it for free and you'll immediately see an increase in conversion. And then what do you do after that? It's well, do you want to keep it? Right. So bye. I try and look at everything that we do. And if I'm looking at a business and we want to start building out cold outbound, I'm okay, when we have a customer that comes in, there's probably 100 little things that we do. is there one of these things that's incredibly high value, that's very fast, that I can operationalize? And so then we peel that off, and then I make that the lead magnet. Because if I'm going to do it anyways in the onboarding experience, I might as well check the box early. And if someone doesn't buy from me, at least they have nothing but positive to say.
So we keep following the same principle, give, until they ask, even through cold email or cold outreach in general. Super
well,
interesting.
I will say with cold outreach, I will make an ask usually, after I make the give, I will make an ask. But from a content perspective.
Right, yeah, because that's the organic side, of course.
Yeah. Just for clarity for the audience.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think so. And now jumping in, because I just really want your opinion on this. You probably could have been the largest affiliate for OpenAI when they released GPT-4 because of just how much you were talking about it. You're talking about like these tools. Have you started creating frameworks, or have you started working with portfolio companies of how they can start using GPT-4 and AI in their cold outreach in order to scale it?
The guys who are so the companies that we have that have outbound as their primary method have already implemented that. So that was from bottom. Like I didn't create a framework that they then start using. I just told all the portfolio companies, like, use this, like, take a week, figure out a tool that you can use that's going to automate some element of the process and see how it works. And if it works, keep it. If not, try it. It was just more of a top-down directive. Sorry, that's a little bit more boring of an answer.
No, absolutely. Sometimes we have clients who they sell to gigantic enterprises with gigantic enterprise contracts. Like I've got one client, actually, it's literally a $5 million contract. The sales cycle is 9 months. The implementation is a year. It could take a really, really long time. To get them to switch to anything other than a call to action saying, hey, like, do you want to hop on a call and talk about this? It is very difficult because they don't believe me that we would actually be able to provide some kind of value. And so as the contract size gets bigger, I normally have clients who think that they can't give away free value because there's so much time and they got to know so many things and this, that, and the other thing. You kind of answered it. Maybe you could go a little bit deeper when the contract value is that high, but
so you chunk up to what do all these customers have in common, and is there one step that you have that is the same across all of the customers that you have? And then I would just say, cool, let's peel, like, it is a little bit of research on your side, right, or on their side of, okay, these are the services we provide. Now they probably have a lot, if they're at that contract size with that type of customer, there's probably a lot of custom, right? I would imagine that's probably a big part of their value prop. But even if you do a vanilla white label version that's 80%, if you provide that for free, then you'd be like, this just gives you an idea. And this is me doing this for free. When we personalize, it's going to have, like, even still giving them a taste, I still would think would outperform. And I think from a convincing them perspective, the easiest thing to do is give evidence. So strong arm / highly incentivize one of those customers and say, I will do this additional amount of outreach my way at no cost, because this is me extending the same favor to you. But here's the deal. If my way works better, we switch to my way. Like, do you want to make more money? I would like to make more money for you. That's great. Like, let's dance.
Yeah. It was so funny. Even just today, I had a client who our call to action was we were A/B testing booking a call versus like making a free Loom audit. And the SDR was like, I don't want to make Loom audits. And I was like, we're getting a 4-to-1 response rate over here. So let's start making some Loom audits.
Right. And then you just operationalize that thing. Like, that's then you templatize and SOP the shit out of that so that you can start churning those out. Like, that's the key. And if you really need to, because if you have like just amazing setters, then you just have it, like, when you really start scaling this, like at Gym Launch, we basically operationalize the second step as a separate team. And so that's when you get into like sales ops, right? And so they would actually deliver the lead magnet as a separate team, who then all they do, like, one guy just makes looms for everyone all day long. And then the SDRs can still just keep banging. This is once you have enough scale.
Absolutely. Yep.
So let's say you're Alex with all your current knowledge, but no audience, no wealth, and you can only build a lead generation agency and use cold email as a business for the rest of your life. How would you start and how would you grow it? I feel we have like so many beginners listening. It'd be super interesting to see how would you start from scratch.
So I have to use cold outbound, and lead generation is the service that I have to sell.
For the rest of your life.
For the rest of my life. Who would I go after? I would go after private equity firms, and I would do cold outreach to get them businesses that want to sell. And those are contractually obligated that I can get a percentage of all the sales. And then I would do lead gen for every private equity firm out there and then get them as many deals as I could.
I was literally on a coaching call yesterday and I told everybody that's like the easiest, highest leverage niche that you could get into. It's just like, you got to know the right people. And it's like, I've got like 2 clients in it. It's so much fun.
And the sales cycle is long as shit though.
The sales, so that's actually.
But if I'm doing it for the rest of my life, you know.
Definitely, I was about to jump back. That's probably one of the most interesting field. Really, really long sales cycle. But once he pays for all the time you've been waiting for, and you know.
I mean, I love those types of businesses because I know that I can wait longer than others. And so then it's like, it's actually not difficult. It's just, you just have to be a different person, which I like, if you've seen my tweets, like I love games where if you wait, you win. Like I always want to play those games.
What are the key elements of creating an 8-figure appointment setting and sales team? Like what makes it work? What does it look like?
Like if I had to pick one factor, it's going to be who you choose to sell. Like you could do the same level of activity, doing outbound for SEO for small businesses versus like the private equity example I gave. And on a 36-month time horizon, you would make so much more money doing the private equity thing. You'd have to wait maybe 18 months before you got your first paycheck. Whereas the SEO thing, you could sell in, 2 days. So the biggest one is going to be the customer that you go after. And then, the next thing is just like how good you are at operationalizing things. So that's where like tech and automation can definitely play a huge part. But the quality of the people that you're able to hire to basically build the culture of the teams. Because I mean, any kind of agency or service is super ops heavy. It's very people heavy, even with automation. And so culture becomes, not that culture is not important in every business, but it's especially important with service-based businesses.
So I had a question about the core four. Well, I have two questions about the core four, I suppose. And so the first one is about, is cold outreach something that every business should attempt to master and take a shot at?
No, I mean, I wouldn't say should for anything. I just like, there are 4 ways to get customers, and like pick one, especially if you're like trying to go to, 7 figures or even 8 figures, you can probably just get away with one of them. If you want to go beyond that, sometimes you have to introduce other things, but combinations work really well. That's like content and cold outreach works really well. Content and paid ads works really well. Content, I think, is an underappreciated one because it just takes a long time. Like that's the problem. It's just like the private equity example is that it just, the reward comes at such a delay that most people can't do it.
We have a lot of people getting responses, and one of the things they struggle with is increasing show-up rates for high-ticket B2B companies. So what's your process or some tips that people can get more people to show up on meetings, demos, sales calls?
So this is really interesting. So I've gotten this question 4 times today. I will say this is that across the board, consumers continue to be less and less responsive, right? So that's just going to always be a trend. And that's why I think that investing in brand is going to be increasingly important in a low trust environment. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. So number one, and just to give you guys like a mind bending example, like I will tell you what the show up rate is on acquisition.com calls. It's 100%, even if it's 2 weeks out. So, and they do that because they're looking forward to the call, because we have already given them a positive experience up to this point. They've already received value from us. And so they feel like the likelihood that they're going to receive value from that call is high, right? And so if we take that as the extreme example, on the opposite end, you have none of those things. So I'll give you the 4 kind of pillars of lead nurture, because we owned Allen, which was a software company that all it did was work leads. And so we were doing 4,000 appointments a day. And so we had a machine learning specialist who just cut the data 100 ways to Friday to figure out what are the actual things that drive throughput. So there are 4. So number 1 is availability. So that is by far, by a long shot, the biggest driver of throughput on any funnel. That sounds surprising because I was very surprised by that too, meaning the total number of days that you have available for appointments and the total number of hours per day that you're available. Kind of weird. And so what's interesting is that even providing more days in the future that someone can book, which was counter to what I felt anecdotally as a salesperson, like if you put more days out, you will get more people to book, but your show rate will be lower, but your total throughput on the funnel goes up. So you basically get more people to book who otherwise wouldn't have booked because the time was convenient, but your individual, as a salesman, your show rate is lower. And so then you have to play the interplay between those things, which is, okay, well, my utilization rate on my sales team is going to go down, but my total number of showed appointments is going to go up. But regardless, if I want to immediately increase the number of appointments that are coming in on any type of funnel, I increase availability in terms of days, hours per day, and time slots per day. So doing like 15-minute appointments, time slots rather than 60 minutes. Even if you do it on 15-minute intervals, people will perceive that the appointment is a shorter time period. So even if it's a 60-minute appointment, having 15-minute increments increases booking rates. So pillar number 1 is availability. Pillar number 2 is speed to contact. So, and there's 2 elements of speed. Speed to contact is from the, you're following up immediately. And also if you're following with a lead as soon as they opt in or as soon as they reply, but then also again, later, if they reply 6 hours later, you're also speed to contact. So like, if you're having a conversation, there's a back and forth, it's maintaining that speed of response. So that's number 2. Number 3 is the volume of reach out. So the number of times that you follow up with a prospect over 5 days. So if you're following up 3 times a day over 5 days, that seems to be a very, like, at minimum. And for all that stuff, we double dial text on all of them to get a higher response rate, get people to book and show. And then number 4 is the personalization, right? And the big piece on personalization is, sure, there's the component of send personalized videos, have the personalized, Loom audit, have that element of personalization. But the other part of it is responding on the channel that they prefer to communicate on. And so if I, because we hit everything. So we would text, we'd Facebook DM, we'd Instagram DM, like I would, wherever I can find you, I'm going to message you, right? And then wherever they respond is now where we talk, which then means you can centralize the messages. And there's plenty of apps that do this now, that you can have one centralized inbox for all media channels. And so the automation hits all of them and then consolidates it in for the person who's working the lead. And so that way you can stay on the channel they prefer. Like for me, I will never respond to an email. I just don't respond to email. But I respond to texts. And so if a sales guy, no matter how good he is trying to email me to get attention, I'm never going to respond. I wouldn't respond to my own mother. I'm not going to respond to an email. But if I get a text, I'll respond. So it's very personalized from that perspective as well. And so those are kind of the 4 pillars of lead nurture as we saw them, just looking at a ton of data.
What are the 3 biggest inflection points or breakthroughs you had with cold outreach success? You mentioned one already with the lead magnet. Are there any others?
No, I mean, by far, that's number 1. Creating an unscalable lead magnet that you then scale. Like that is by far, bar none, the biggest response rate boost that you're going to get. And whenever I look at constraints, I always try and go to the top of the funnel, because going from 1% to 2% or 1% to 3% or 3.5%, there are very few other parts of the funnel where you get, a 2.5% increase and it actually triples, the amount of actual throughput through the entire process. And so usually I'll work from front to back, because and I think I talk about this in the book on More, Better, New in that section, you can always determine the constraint based on, if I were to add a fixed percentage to every aspect of my funnel, where do I see the largest increase in absolute throughput? And so I focus from that perspective. So number 1 is that. Number 2 is going to be training for the team. So learning to train, as silly as it sounds, like actually role playing and heavily rewarding script adherence equally to, and sometimes even more than, the outcome of the calls. Because if you think about this, everybody here hopefully has taken a cold call before, or taken, I'm assuming everybody here has. If you can put your salesman hat on for a second and remember what it was like, if you knew that you could make money by simply perfectly executing the script, then the pressure of the call goes down. But what also happens is adherence to the script goes up. And when you adhere to the script more, you get more sets or you get more closes. And so creating a culture of the script is God. And if we don't deviate from the script. If the script isn't working, then everybody is adhering, and then we can change the script. But until we have absolute adherence to the script, you can't do anything. And so that is just a principle from sales teams that has to be nailed down. Otherwise, you basically just have a bunch of lone wolves that close whatever way they possibly can. And what happens is you get a lot of people who create false positives. So what I mean by that is they go off script once and they get a close. And then they're like, oh, I'm going to do this next time. And they learn bad habits because they get reinforced for doing the wrong thing. And so I would go so far as to say, if you don't follow the script and you close, I'm not paying, because you're also promising things that aren't good, right? Now, if we want to add something to the script, then we decide as a team that this makes sense, and then we'll add it in for everyone, and we'll actually be able to split test. But until you can get adherence from the team, and the reason I like the emphasis on the script so much is that it's so easy to drill. If the script becomes God, then it becomes very clear what the job is. And then you can control this much more at scale. And that's really how you can scale the sales team. And then obviously making sure that the manager understands that their job as a manager is the enforcement of standards, which is that these are the cultural norms of this team. That is the job of the manager, is what is the culture of this team. So if you have a shitty culture on the team, it is the fault of the manager. So in terms of, the biggest increase, number 1 was lead magnets. Number 2 is script is God. And I would probably say the culture thing, that's a bonus one. The third one is where we're getting our leads from. So the list is still king. If if you hit a terrible list, it doesn't matter how good everything else is, you're not going to get responses. And so really putting more effort into thinking, how can we clean lists and scrape lists from better sources that have more qualified leads is probably, of all of the things, that's probably even more important than the lead magnet, because you have to have that before you can introduce anything else. You email a bunch of moms and you're talking about SaaS software, it really doesn't matter. So that's number 1.
To go possibly out on a limb here, could I get a 2-minute roast of some copy that I wrote for Gym Launch and see what you think of it?
Oh, for Gym Launch? Yeah, sure.
So this would be an outbound campaign to only gym owners that have one location, because we could scrape Google Maps for all of this, and they have at least 4 and 5-star Google reviews. Otherwise, the campaign doesn't really make sense. And so subject, new members. First name, I was looking for gyms in location because we're scraping Google Maps. We have that, and saw the Google review, the member name. So Eduardo left about, and then we can use AI to summarize the review that they left. So about how clean the gym is, whatever. Have you thought about running ads with your successful members front and center? The reason I ask is we help gyms grow their membership base with a couple proven blueprints, and that's one we start. Could I send you our Facebook ad blueprint that our gyms are using to get 20 to 30 members a month? Totally free, of course. Signature, and then in the PS section I wrote some Facebook ad copy to get you started, and then we could just use GPT-4 to like create copy for their area and things like that.
I like it. One thing I would add is instead of saying like the 20 to 30, I would give the exact data.
Nice.
I'd say our average gym signs up 17.3 members in the first 30 days at this price point.
Love that. I feel like I got that off the website. I don't know why I said 20 to 30, but great. Yeah, I really appreciate that.
It's a fundamentally sound outbound script. You know what I mean? Like, do I think it would work? Yes.
Well, actually, that's going to be the second part of this masterclass. Eric and I prepared some workflows that we use. The one that I used to send 7,000 leads to Alex book launch. And Eric actually prepared a campaign from gym launch, and I think he's going to be able to show a couple of results that he prepared. Maybe we're going to be able to send it to your team, some leads coming from that, but that's going to be for the second part of this masterclass. Alex, thank you very much for your time and for all this incredible wisdom and tactical advice. And we'll see you soon.
And before we sign off, thank you all for putting the effort that you guys did to promote the book. I know that there wasn't like a financial incentive, and so I just appreciate you helping me, get the word out and help, hopefully help as many people get out of financial poverty or grow their businesses, or basically just realize that there's a better way to live life. And I will say that you guys are near and dear to my heart, because there are few jobs more thankless than the cold outreach team. You know what I mean? And having gone from the set to the closers and figuring out, warming up domains and scraping the lists and it's just a job of brute force and persistence. And so you guys are my kind of people, and I appreciate you for that. So thank you. I love what you guys represent.
Thank you very much. And we're looking forward for money models next year. So I cannot wait for that.
And could I make a quick content request? I probably listen to you every day when I'm in the gym. Could you do a video on how to divide equity when you're giving equity to other co-founders? I don't think you've ever made one on that.
Big picture. Everyone has to be happy, but it doesn't mean that everything's equitable. So like not everyone's the same, and it doesn't mean that everyone needs to have the same percentage. And a big part of this is making sure that the people who are co-founders actually have different skill sets than you do. So like the biggest mistake small business owners make when they're getting into partnerships is they just find partners that they get along with. And that is, it's important, but you want to make sure that you have complementary skills. And so I'm all for multiple co-founders in a business because it does increase the likelihood that the business is successful. So like Y Combinator, for example, doesn't even take solo founders because it's just so hard to start a big business. So like all for that bigger, smaller slice, bigger pie. I'm obviously an investor, so like I have to believe in that, right? But it's making sure that the contribution of each of these individual people are additive and not overlapping to the greatest degree possible. And if you're looking at what are the roles that are going to be that I would want to look for in a partnership, I would probably have someone who's really good at building product or services. I'd have someone who's very good at leading and operating, and then I would have someone who's very good at marketing and sales. Right. So you need to have somebody who can get the customers, you have somebody who can deliver on the promises, and then the other person to keep the other two out of jail and making sure that they're actually running a team. And so if you're looking at the three, now those don't necessarily need to be equitable, and it depends because some people are good at 2 of those things or 1.5 of those things. And so that's where like I don't have a framework for that because everyone's thinking is individual, including the businesses, and do they need capital, like all of that, like it is very custom. But from a framework perspective to think through, I want to make sure that all 3 of those things are covered, and that the founders have as little overlap as possible, and that they have as much alignment on where they want to take the business and how they want to get there. Because talking about those things, there's usually where there's conflict down the road, right? It's like, hey, dude, we're making, $200,000 a month in profit, and one guy's like, I've got kids and a wife, and that's why I did this. I want to be able to like live my life. And some guy's like, dude, I want to go to $1 billion. And like, you have to be clear on that up front, and then also paint the picture of what might happen in the future. Like actually sit in it and be like, if we get to here and you have kids, how are you going to feel then? Right? And like really try and confront some of those harder decisions. And if you can't confront hard decisions when you don't have a business, it's fucking way harder when you do. So that would be my mental framework for trying to work through that.
Amazing. Well, can't wait for the podcast episode to come out then.
All right, appreciate you guys.
Alex shares his mindset around cold outreach, but the devil is in the detail. What should you do today to get that calendar filled up with that appointment day over day? I drove 7,000 leads to Alex Hormozi using these really clever tactics. Watch my next video while we explain what I did step by step.